So the very first section this morning now is, how do we develop these investment and development portfolios? And now you're going to see the value of your research. Because in this process of implementation now, you're looking for specific guidance. With the best intention at the moment, current practice is people either try to fit budgets to the change they want to facilitate, which I can tell you will hardly work. Well, that's why you first need to understand the size, the scale, the scope of the change. And that is why there's so little evidence of impact. Because we tried to change an education system with 1.7 million rand. Can you see what I'm saying? So first understand what is this beautiful picture, this beautiful future you want to see. And your reality check is going to come, quite honestly, we only have 1.7 million rand this year, which means we probably can only do 300 food parcels. With the best intention, that's what we can get for our resources. The research is going to show you who else is working in this space. So let's use the Tiger example. They're a manufacturer. They don't retail, but they can probably go into a partnership with a retailer to increase access to get the food to people. She's only got 1.7. How's she going to improve access to make people more food secure? She can't plant, turn the whole country into a veggie patch. She's only got 1.7 million rand. But this is where the logic fails us, because we generally think, I've got 10 million rand, so I can probably do 4 focus areas, 4 portfolios. So we're going to do health and sport and education and health. There's 4. And then so that means 2.5 million per portfolio, which means there's 2 programs per portfolio, which means 2.5, it's 1.75 per program. So that we know in the back of our head. So when we start looking for proposals, guess what we're going to do? Doesn't matter how good that proposal is, we know we've only got 1.7. They can ask for 10 million if they want to. So the question is, where do we start make these decisions? So I'm forcing you to first get an understanding of what is the change that you want to bring about. Now let's look at what is possible. Okay, so the first thing is you're going to see the value of your research. Who else is working in this space? What does my baseline say? What does the community need based on my assessment? And it's to help get closer and closer to what I can do with the resources I have. So you're going to look at what is it that I want to achieve based on my theory of change. What are my objectives? You're going to look at your logic model framework. What are the activities that I can possibly do? So in the case of increased access to food security, like I said, they can buy land and they can give seeds. That's one way for people to grow their own food, right? So they can probably go to Food and Trees for Africa and say, right, we've got 1.7 million rand, how many communities can you give me? Or this is where my factories are. I'm looking for a program in KZN and in the Northern Cape and in the Western Cape. Again, I want to encourage you to first look at what is possible from your theory of change, to eliminate waste. Because here's the thing, when we go out for a call of proposals, here's the kind of thing. We're looking for proposals to increase access and enable food security. So the assumption is everybody in the food space will send in a proposal, or we go and look for proposals. If we have not defined our own theory of change, we will take whatever's going to come our way. And then again we sit with wastage. If we've decided we're not going to do boreholes, we're not going to do seeds, we're only going to deliver food parcels, that means only the food bank actually qualifies for that kind of program. So why create this whole flurry in the industry if we know We've only got 1.7, and actually we just want to get 200 parcels out. Why waste people's time and energy? You first got to decide what you want to do. You've got to have your own theory of change based on your own vision of the change you want to bring about. You can ask in the market. Based on your own research. Because at the moment, practice, and let me tell you how it really is, we put out a call for proposals because we assume we're going to get all this research from these NGOs. That is so unfair. They're so constrained. And so what happens as a result of the 20 or 200 proposals, there's 200 ways to improve access to food. 200 organizations had to write that. On average, 2 people, it's 400 people. And you're going to get everything from a 200 million rand proposal to a 2 million rand proposal. And because you haven't given them the guidelines of what is the actual change, they're going to give you all these different kind of ways. Until you know what you want to do, you can't tell other people what you want or don't want. So you've got to identify activities. You've got to choose a course of action. We only want proposals for food gardens. Finish and clear. If you want to deliver the food, if you want to buy the food, if you want to, if you want to give seeds, maybe then we want to talk to you. So if you Monsanto, come talk to us. If you buy come talk to us. I'm not so sure about Monsanto, about the seeds, but never. Can you see what I'm saying? It defines the partnerships you're going to enter into. It defines the kind of NGO that you're going to look for. And that is why I wanted to finish strategy first, because today we're going to talk about program design. Today we're going to talk about budgets. Today we're going to talk about partnerships. Today we're going to talk about exit and sustainability, program design. But you first have to do your own. You can't expect the NGOs. And that's current practice at the moment. So I wanted to make sure that you understand you first have to do the homework yourself before you ask. Because depending on what is the change you want to do, that's what you're going to ask for. So you've got to know what is your objectives, you've got to know how you're going to get there, you've got to choose a course of action, and you've got to actually have a theory of change and a logic model framework. When it's going to come to due diligence, which we're also going to do today, in choosing your NGO partners, this is the basis for selection, not whether they have an NGO certificate. Because now it doesn't matter. And remember what Karen said to you yesterday. If you can find a social entrepreneur, you're going to exclude them from here because you're looking for that NGO certificate. But what if it's the perfect fit? So we decide so much stuff up front. So I'm challenging existing grant-making practices. Because we assume so much, and on that basis we say yes or no. We say no just because there's no certificate. But here's the choice you've actually got. Let's take the food bank as an example. That is an NGO. But what if you got a courier company? That's their core business. It's more effective if they go and deliver a parcel to also take your parcels along with it. There's leverage, there's value in that. Delivery is their core business. So why not enter into a partnership with a courier company? Yes, I know there's no NGO certificate. And there's no Section 18. Okay? The biggest you can hope for is probably a BEE certificate. But can you see this, the restraints we've built into, the ineffectiveness, the unsustainability we've built into existing practices? Because we never defined what is it that we want to do first. I'm going to give you an opportunity, Kosi, and then Richard.
Okay. Just a question so furthermore to our SED CSI strategy Tiger brands, we also have specific brands, the likes of Tasty Rice, Black Peanut Butter, Energy, that also want to do their own CSI, brand-related CSI initiative. So what I wanted to just find out from you is that do we incorporate it under our SED, CSI, or do we craft layers according to what their brand strategies are, or what the brand said, obviously? But then, because it's tied, remember we have to speak the same language, we have to, do the things the same as the entire corporate. So that's where my disconnect is.
It's a beautiful question. The fight of the brand is a big fight. Here's what I can share with you from my experience. That brand requirement is part of the business case already. The reason being because you want to add value. So it's in your best interest to make provision for the different brands. So when you develop your theory of change, for instance, I'm trying to think of, say for instance, your Tastic is one of your brands. So how do you integrate that? The value you deliver back. You don't want them to do their own thing. Trust me on this. You do not want them to do your own thing. They must be part of this. So therefore, if the theory of change is done, remember you've already integrated in your research and your engagement and your business case. They're already provided for. Here's what you leverage the brands for, is that different streams of money, because there's always money for brands. So how are you going to use it? You've only got 1.7 for the whole portfolio, but there's money there. And they've got to they want to speak to their customers' emotions and all those sorts of things. Increase their sales. So when we deliver the food parcels, maybe that component is the Tastic brand. But when it comes to the seeds, that's a different brand that take ownership. But you want them to move in your theory of change framework. You would never want them to do their own. But it's your objective, it's your core responsibility to bring it in. You want to shape that thinking before they get that way.
I can share that what we have done as a first kind of way to manage that is once we had an understanding of what our focus was, we had a workshop with, and maybe this is helpful to other companies as well, we had a workshop with all of our marketing executives and shared our focus and shared how we got to that focus. And then said, look, we're here to support brand CSI, but these are the guidelines for what we believe. These are kind of the limitations or, that you should work on when developing a brand CSI initiative. And if you do, we'll be able to support you. And then we had a slide that said, what's in it for you? And the slide really was about, we reach 40,000 people a month. We have partner NGOs in 13 communities in all of the provinces across South Africa. That means when you have a new product and you want to share it with the world, here you go, here's our pace. So it has to, and that's a big lesson we learned, is it has to be kind of, yes, we'll come on with you, but here's what's in it for you, and here's what's in it for us, and let's see how we can negotiate, because they are very...
Yeah. And you want to preempt that. The sooner your theory of practice is done, the sooner your theory of change is done, then that forms the basis of discussion. You're not waiting for them to come and tell you what you're going to do. No. Because we need to all buy into this. The other value you can add now is brand activation in specific communities. So I'm just saying this again, that's part of the return on investment. There's so much value CSI can bring. It's just shape it yourself. Don't allow them for the tail to wag the dog. Yeah. So I just want to, before I get you, thank you for that. That's a very critical question because we've got conflicting brands in the room. Richard.
Now, I just want to comment on that idea that you say that when somebody comes, an NGO, whoever, what we must rather do is help that company or NGO or whatever it is to rather get to the stage of when it needs an patient to let them get in. Because some, we would get one letter, small, of asking what they are.
Yeah.
And then we need to do investigation. So that person don't even know what you are organization, certificate, NGO, or whatever you call it.
Yes.
So you need to assist that person.
Yes. Yes. And this is probably the value that the BE Act brought to us. There's so much more reason to do CSI and more value CSI can deliver back to the business, whether it's skills development, whether it's value chain, whether it's supplier development, whether it's procurement. There's just so much more. It gave us a lot bigger toolbox to show the value. And like in your case, even if it's not an NGO, it's a procurement opportunity. We're working with the suppliers we already developed. Okay, so it's a very important point.
I want to make a point of including marketing in a maybe slightly different way as well.
Please.
In South Africa, NPOs are really hung up on Section 18A certificates and no big signposts on the wall with your name on it because then SARS will come get us. But in actual fact, the marketing budget is often way bigger than the CSI budget in any way, shape or form. And NPOs are not good at making that mental leap. And I'm sorry, I'm going to be critical of them because I sit in their space, so I feel entitled. They don't make that leap from, we'll give you a Section 18A certificate, to, we have a massive empty wall on the side of a busy highway, would you like to grant it? Mm-hmm. You know, and I think as CSI practitioners and CSR practitioners, I think it's not a responsibility, but it's a huge added value to be able to point those opportunities out to NPOs, because it's not a leap that most of them have made. And it's another really big, and you'll notice I'm fixated on income sources. It's another really big income source that is largely being ignored in the nonprofit sector. Because for all these years, we've just said, we'll give you Section 18A, and everybody's been happy with that.
And now it's about value. Sandra.
I just want to add on what Melanie said. In our agreement with the beneficiaries, there's a part where we ask them, like, in terms of marketing, what is it that they're going to do for us? Are they going to give us space in their business to put it on a sign for ACI? Like, they have to write maybe a paragraph or two, what, in terms of marketing, what are they going to do for ACI?
Thank you, Sandra. I just, before I give you that, there was a time that nobody wanted a name on a building at all, especially in a conflict time like last 2-3 years. Because if a building's been burned, the last thing you want to remain is the signpost on the corner. Because here's this burnt library and it says funded by ABC Shoes. Because now the expectation, ABC Shoes is going to come back and fix that line. So I do want to say, the challenge for NGOs, and I challenge them all the time, what else apart from signposting can you give? And I think they've never thought that way. They've never thought about those beneficiaries as consumers.
But I think they're also very afraid of falling foul of SARS. Because the tax exemption unit, the TU, who gives you the PBO number, has suddenly, after many years of sitting on its rear end, is starting to get its act together. And they're becoming really strict about what qualifies for Section 18A and what doesn't. And the NPOs aren't informed, the practitioners aren't informed, and everybody just gets ready to achieve. So if it is recognition that you're looking for, understand that you might not get a Section 18A out of it, but what you've got to look at is what is the return on the investment in terms of that recognition. Was it worth investing that CSI money into something that you were hoping for brand visibility maybe? Did you get the brand visibility that you needed from it? And I think that's a road we haven't really hit.
And it's because of this point, Sandra, this, what's in it for us and how can we get exposure? How can we get recognition for what we've done? Which is why flagships have suddenly just mushroomed. And it was around this brand intellectual property. And we're going to cover flagships a little bit later. But it's because NGOs weren't able to give this whole big...
And they actually still aren't, if they're going to give Section 18A.
Yeah. When we do impact assessments, one of the first questions we ask is, why do you think the funder funded you? What is in it for them? I'll get 3 answers. The PR, marketing, and brand, they call it, that's the one thing. They put all the 3 of those words in one sentence. Number 2, BE certificate. And number 3, the tax benefit. But can you see that's not actually a benefit for us? That's not a return. They think it is. So we also, in our MOUs, have to be very clear as what is our expectation on this return. Okay, so I hope you understood that in this journey so far, I've never come to a conclusion, what is the kind of program we're going to fund? Only now, once we've shaped a portfolio, do we decide. But it's current practice, we decide we're going to do food parcels. We're going to provide classes. We're going to provide camps. We're going to provide coaching. We're going to provide wheelchairs. We're solution-based, output-based, before we totally shaped this fit of what we want to change, the change we want to achieve. And it's only now that we start to really define the focus areas, because we know what is the outcome that we foresee. At this kind of time, we get too quickly to have an answer to a question we haven't defined yet. So now we start shaping the portfolios and the focus areas.